let me first go to my presentation overview. So first what I'm going to do is talk about what I believe to be your greatest interview challenge. And the rest of the presentation will have some ideas about interview strategies you can use to overcome that challenge. Now, what I'm going to ask you to do is to hold your questions. We will have a fairly lengthy period of time at the end of my presentation to ask questions. You will find that I will not talk to certain points which I know are of interest to you. So for example, today I'm not going to be talking in my presentation about how to handle the salary question. But if you ask me a question after my presentation, I would be happy to talk about the salary question. So let's talk about one of my basic tenets about job interviewing. Job interviews are broken, and they're broken in a lot of ways. One of the ways we know it's broken is they simply don't do a good job selecting the right person for the job. And it's lots of reasons which I'm not going to get into, although one of the primary reasons is subjectivity on the side of the interviewer. Hiring managers are not good interviewers. They use their gut, and their gut is typically wrong. So research shows that interviews in the hiring process only hire the right person about 51% of the time. 48% of the time, a person's hired that is no longer in that job after 12 to 18 months. So the interview process is broken, but you can fix your interviews. And you can win the interview and land the job. It's a different idea, it's a different approach, it's a different attitude about interviewing. That the interview is for you to guide, and you need to get active in your interviews. And you can't leave it up to the interviewer to make sure that your interview goes well. So you need to get active in your interviews. Interviews are broken, but you can fix your interview and win the job. Another basic philosophy and tenet that I have about job search and job interviews is it is a sales process. Your entire job search is a sales process where you are selling your background, services, skills, education to a customer. And that customer is an employer. Now, when I talk about sales, lots of people get nervous because they say, I'm not a salesperson, I don't like sales, I've avoided sales, I've never been engaged, I've never had a job doing sales. The good news is that we are all salespeople. We are selling all the time. So if I change that word sale to persuasion, which is really what salespeople do, is they persuade people to buy things. You are persuading people to do things all the time. Whether it's just simply persuading your kid to clean up their room, or you're persuading a significant other to go to one movie or another, or friends to do one thing or another, or to persuade a boss to come around to your way of thinking. You are selling ideas and selling things all the time. So do not be nervous about this sales idea, because you have the basic sales skills you need to do very well in your job search. You just haven't been thinking about them and applying them, the sales strategies and skills you have. The other good news about the fact that job search is a sales process is there is a huge amount of sales strategies and sales knowledge and information out there. You can take all of that information and start applying it to your job search, and you can apply that to your job interviews. So as I go through this and I talk about selling and how you're selling yourself in an interview, which is basically a face-to-face sales call, again, keep in mind that you have all the skills you need, and of course out there's lots of books and information about sales strategies you can use. So let's talk about the greatest sales challenges. So think about going out to buy something. And when I suggest that you think about buying something, what I'm really thinking about is a large ticket item. I'm not talking about a $2 or $3 item where you really don't think about it very much. But say you're going out to buy a car, a house, an appliance, somewhere where it really makes a difference, that purchase, and it hurts you in the pocketbook a little bit. So one of the first questions you're going to have is it the right one? You know, is this the right thing for me? Is it the right computer, the right refrigerator, the right car, the right house? Am I paying too much? So one of the concerns is, am I paying too much for this? I mean, you know, if I go out to buy a car, have I negotiated enough? Or am I paying too much for this car? Can I be paying less? After I purchase it, will it perform? Am I getting the right dishwasher for my family, or the right refrigerator, or the right computer? So after I have laid out all my money for this, is it going to be something that's going to work for me? Will there be a better one next month? If I wait and keep shopping, will there be a better one next month? Will there be something coming out that's new and different that I should wait for? I mean, we face this in technology a lot because there's always new technology coming out. And if I wait for the next iPhone, maybe that phone's a little bit better than the one I can purchase today. So what happens? There's all this fear, uncertainty, and doubt that a purchaser has in their mind when they go to buy an item. This is the same thing, the same challenge that a hiring manager has when they go to hire somebody into a job. They have fear, uncertainty, and doubt about who to hire. And hiring someone is a very high-risk activity. If a hiring manager makes a mistake and hires the wrong person, first of all, it looks very bad for them. And then it gets to become very expensive. In fact, research shows that at the lowest levels, a bad hire, which is someone who's no longer there after 12 to 18 months, costs 2 times salary at the lowest levels. As you move up the ranks and as you move up the salary, it gets up to as high as 40 times a person's salary is lost on a bad hire. And think about all the costs. There's training costs. First of all, there's hiring costs, and there's recruiting costs, and then there's interview time, then there's training, then there's morale issues as a person doesn't work out, there's lost time, lost productivity, and then you have to go all the way back and start all over again. So it's a very high risk. It's an employee is a large ticket item. So there's great fear, uncertainty, and doubt. So when you go into your interviews, your number one challenge is to erase the fear, uncertainty, and doubt that that hiring manager has. And once you clear that FUD out of the picture, then they feel comfortable to hire you. So again, in this sales process, your greatest challenge is getting rid of that FUD. So your number one challenge, get the FUD out. So what I'm hoping is that as you start to think about this FUD, this fear, uncertainty, doubt, as you start to approach your interviews, start to think about what you can do, how you can present yourself, what you can do in the interview to reduce that FUD. And the techniques I'm going to talk about now are things that you can do to get rid of that FUD. Okay, so here are some helpful tips. The first thing is you need to think like a small business. One of the things I suggest to the people I work with and in various workshops is you can no longer think of yourself as an employee. You were really never an employee, although you were called that. What you were and what you will be is an independent contractor selling your services to a customer. Now, if you've had a long-term run at a company It just means that you sold your services for a long time to one customer. But we are all small companies, and even more so today and in this employment marketplace. We are all me Inc. And you need to think of yourself that way. And you need to do all the things a small business does to manage your career. So for example, you need to stay up with the trends, the information that's coming out, what's going on in your industry. One of the mistakes people make is they go to work every day and all they do is work. You need to be looking for a job every day. I'm not talking about going out there and sending out your resume and going on interviews, but I am talking about maintaining and growing your network. I'm talking about staying current with information, with new trends, with new technology. Being active in associations, so you're in touch with what's going on in your industry. And constantly doing career development. I have two kids, one's 28, one's 25. When they get a new job, I give them about a month before I ask them the question, are you starting to look for a new job yet? And of course they say, Dad, nah, they bitch a bit. But they need to be doing that. They need to be, again, out and interview, and not interview, out and networking and growing their network. I'm on their LinkedIn, I'm linked into them. So I watch what their LinkedIn activity is. If their LinkedIn activity falls off, I say to them, what's going on with LinkedIn? Constantly doing career management. That's what small businesses do. Well, small businesses need to maintain their connections. They need to be growing their business all the time. They need to be out there networking and not thinking about themselves as an employer. As an employee. Here's a simple thing you can do. Highly effective. This is your first interview question. Before we get started, I'm just curious. Why did you choose to invite me for an interview? How many of you have asked this question in an interview? Just maybe 5 or 6. Why is this a great question? Great question for 2 reasons. The first reason is that you may very well learn something about your background, skills, education that the company is interested in, of which you were not aware. I have asked people I've spoken with people who have asked this question in interviews, and they often say, you know something, it was weird. They were interested in this little thing I did 5 years ago, which took 10 minutes. And that's what they were interested in. Well, if you find out that's what they're interested in, you then should spend time in your interview addressing that and going back to that and highlighting that. Whatever it is that they have identified for you. The other thing, it's psychological. Human beings, once they have said out loud what they like and what they're committed to, will continue to focus on that. So if I say to you, really, what I like about you is you, in your HR experience, you have a background in establishing talent management programs. For the rest of the interview, I'm going to be looking for evidence that supports the fact that I like the fact that you have a background in talent management. And of course, if you have asked a question and you know that I'm interested in talent management, you'll start to talk about it. And while I was doing that talent management program, and during that talent management program, and some of the analysis I needed to do during that talent management program, so you keep on reinforcing that thing that they like about you. And you get a bit of a halo. You're the talent management person. We really like that talent management person we interviewed. Again, it's a simple technique, a simple strategy, easy to do, but has huge impact. And my suggestion is that you ask this as early as you possibly can in your interviews. even so far as interrupting the interview. So if they're saying to you, tell me about yourself, or maybe they've talked a little bit about the position, and then they start to focus on you, you could say, excuse me, just before we get started, I'm really excited about being here, and I'm looking forward to you getting to know me, but I am just curious. Could you share with me why you chose to invite me for an interview today? A really legitimate question, and they should have an answer. If they don't have an answer, that's a little weird, and you need to check into that. Do you even know who I am? Have you seen my resume? Or did I just get plunked down in front of you? Okay, so that's the first helpful hint. Here's another helpful hint that many people don't use. Having a phrase that pays. What do you want your interviewer to remember about you? And by the way, having a phrase that pays for your whole job search is not a bad idea. Clinton's phrase that pays, President Clinton's phrase that pays was a bridge to the future. Obama's phrase that pays was hope. So each of them have an idea, politicians and a lot of people have an idea that they want to leave you with, they want you to think about them. We had a phrase that pays. There was a gentleman who introduced himself, UPS, and he gave us a phrase that pays. Did anyone remember what his phrase that pays?
I make smiles.
Close. That's it, but you missed one word. It wasn't I deliver smiles, right? So that's a phrase that pays. I deliver smiles. Well, that's kind of notable. I mean, I noted it, Jeff noted it, maybe some other people in the room noted it. So what I suggest is you come up with a phrase that pays and then use it in your interviews. So here's an example. I manage my boss's office efficiently. This was an administrative assistant who actually had lost her job, had been out of work for a year, had 8 interviews with no offers. So we worked together a bit, and we came up with this phrase that pays, and she also put together an interview presentation and did some other things. But she had 3 interviews and got 3 job offers. And she would use this phrase, I manage my boss's office efficiently. Why should we hire you? Well, I manage my boss's office efficiently, and let me tell you how I do that. Tell me about what you did on your last job. Well, I manage my boss's office efficiently. Let me give you some ideas about the things I did. So she would, it's like not like a million times in the interview, but maybe 3, 4, 5 times she would repeat this phrase, I manage my boss's office efficiently. The idea is that when you leave the interview, you want the interviewer thinking, wow, this person we just interviewed, she manages her boss's office efficiently. Another example, I'm the go-to guy for financial management. This was a person who was a CFO. And he prided himself on the fact that he could do everything in a financial office. So if the bookkeeper didn't show up, he could sit down and he could keep the books for that day. He could do payroll. And he could also do information technology, accounting systems. He could do high-level strategy around financial issues in companies. He was the go-to guy for financial management. And he would talk about that. On my last job, if there was any question about how to use this, I was the go-to guy. When they needed to figure out how to restructure the company financially, I was the go-to guy. So he gets to be known in the interview as the go-to guy for financial management. By the way, you could also, as I said before, you could use this as you introduce yourself as I deliver smiles, which is used here to introduce. He used to introduce himself in this, in a crowd like this. You can use your phrase that pays as you introduce yourself. There was a realtor who was looking for a job. Her phrase that pays was, I deliver the American dream. I help people buy houses. It's different than saying, I'm a realtor. I'm looking for a job. One more example. I create clarity from chaos. This was a web designer, media person, who in previous jobs had gone into companies and they had all sorts of confusing websites, and one department had this and another department had another one, and he would come in and he would create clarity from that chaos. And that's how was his phrase that pays. I create clarity from chaos. Why should we hire you? I can come into your company. You have lots of different websites. You have a confusing social media policy. I can create clarity from that chaos for you. By the way, that's not a bad phrase that pays that you can use. Many different people can use. I create clarity from chaos. It's not just web design. But I would suggest that you come up with a phrase that pays for yourself. Put it on your business cards. People have business cards? Yes? Okay, everybody has business. Well, everybody should have business cards. If you're a job search, you need a business card because you're your own company. Companies have business cards, right? So get your own business card, and you can put on there, administrative assistant. I manage my boss's office efficiently. Okay, so what's my phrase that pays? My phrase that pays is, I help people land jobs they love and earn the money they deserve. Why would you want to work with me as a coach? Because I help people land jobs they love and earn the money they deserve. Are you interested in working with me? So that's my phrase that pays. Okay. One of the reasons that job interviews are broken is that they are verbal. They are two people sitting and talking to one another. It is absolutely the worst way for people to communicate and understand and learn and have retention about information. It's just bad. Only 20% of the population are auditory learners. They learn by listening. 40% of the population are visual learners. And 40% of the population are kinesthetic learners, which means that they have to move in some way to learn. Like, I'm a kinesthetic learner, so it's often helpful for me that when I'm in a meeting, I'll write and take notes, because that motion of taking notes helps me retain things. But here we have an interview which is verbal. You need to take your verbal interview and change it to a visual interview. So this is the section of this presentation where I'm going to talk about using an interview presentation, which is a visual document in your interviews. So this is what an interview presentation actually looks like. Okay. Physically, it looks like this. Now, for those of you who have not been introduced to this idea, it is new, it is different, it is bold, it is a differentiator. So what you want to do is put together a booklet that looks like this, bring it with you to your interview, and give a copy to each person that you are interviewing with. You don't want to do a PowerPoint presentation that's projected. You don't want to have this on your laptop, because you actually want to hand it to the person, and you want them to be able to write on it, and you also want to be able to maintain eye contact as you are giving the presentation. Okay. And I actually use the word presentation. It's really not meant to be a presentation. It's meant to be a conversation starter. The best interview you will have is a conversation. The worst interview you will have will be a cross-examination, where you are sitting there being asked questions, answering those questions, and hoping you get the answers correct to the best of your knowledge. So you want to do things to create conversations. So one of the things in terms of fear, uncertainty, and doubt in an interviewer's mind is this person interested and motivated in this job? Because in today's employment marketplace, lots of hiring managers, interviewers are concerned that if you come and you take this job, especially if it's a little bit below the level where you were or the salary range that you were, that you're just taking this job, and as soon as another job comes along, you're just going to jump ship. So how do you project interest and motivation in a job? Well, the number one way is to show preparation. And if you come into an interview very well prepared, it shows that you have interest and motivation in that job. Interviewers' number one complaint, is that the candidate doesn't know enough about the company. They haven't done their research. That's their number one complaint. So it's very important to go into interviews really well prepared. And by the way, when I talk about well prepared these days, it's not just knowing about the industry, the company, and the job, it's also knowing about the interviewer as best you can by researching them on LinkedIn and on Google. And it's very helpful to go in and say to them, I noticed that you graduated from this school or that you were at this company, and you talk to them about their background as well. It's not stalking, it's expected, and they're doing the same for you. So here's what the presentation looks like. And I'll talk a little bit later. There's actually a website that I will direct you to that walks you through putting this together. So I'm going to go through the content, and you're going to say, oh my gosh, how could I come up with all that content? It's easy. This takes about, if you just sail through it, takes about 20 minutes to put together. I've had people spend 6 to 8 hours on it, but it only takes 20 minutes. So the first part of this presentation is what are the critical job requirements. Now again, you are in a sales call, and the first thing any good salesperson does is they do a needs analysis. So you would turn to the first page and you would say, based on my understanding of the job at this time, here's what I believe to be the critical requirements of this job. Let's talk about them. And it creates a conversation, and you get to understand in depth what the requirements are of that job from the interviewer's perspective. Important. You may have 20 or 30 years in that profession, and you may actually have a lot more experience than the person that's interviewing you, but you don't know that job from the interviewer's perspective. So you need to be open and listening. The number 2 reason why people fail at jobs is they take a job thinking it's one thing, and when they get on the job, they actually find out that it's something else. Why do you let that happen? This type of conversation about the critical job requirements and really getting in depth will help you avoid that problem. The second part of the presentation is your match with the requirements. Here's what I believe the requirements to be. Here's the things I've done that will help you understand that I can do this job and I can do it well. One of the big FUD factors for interviewers is can you do this job and can you do it well? Remember that buyer's dilemma. If I buy this refrigerator, is it going to work for me the way I want it to? If I buy this computer, is it going to be the one I want? Same thing about hiring managers. They're concerned that if they hire you, will you be able to do the job and can you do it well? So you talk through your match for those requirements. The next part of the presentation is additional areas of expertise. What else do you bring to the table? What do you bring to the table that differentiates you from all the other people that I'm interviewing? I'm assuming that if you're in here for an interview, you've matched the basic critical requirements of the job. How are you going to differentiate yourself from the other people that have come in and have those basic requirements? This is an area on the presentation where you talk about, these are other things that I can do that are over and above the requirements that you've asked for on the job, but are of value to the job or to the company. For example, these days, if you are bilingual, especially in Spanish, that may very well be an additional area of expertise that you bring to the job. I had a client who was going for a job as a manager in a factory. He's going to manage an entire factory. And he put on this additional area of expertise that he could read blueprints and he could work with construction contractors. Not part of the job description anywhere. But he talked about that in the interview. He put it on his additional areas of expertise. And they said to him in the interview, that's really great, because within the next 12 to 18 months, we are either going to be expanding our current facility or building a new one. That skill would be very helpful for us. He ended up getting the job. Now, obviously not because of that one thing, but that was helpful, and it was an additional area of expertise he had that other people that were interviewing did not. You all have additional areas of expertise that you can bring to the job. One of the ways to think about this is, if you are on a previous job, and maybe you had a number of other people that are doing the same job as you, what did you have, or what knowledge, or what skills did you have that other people did not? Now, you can't go out of bounds like saying, well, you're going for an accounting position. You say, well, I'm a gourmet chef. Well, that doesn't work, right? It's nice and all, but you need to stay within the, within the profession. Okay. The next is accomplishment stories. Right? You all have accomplishment stories, yes? Everybody accomplishment stories? Who has accomplishment stories? Okay, well, everybody should be raising their hand. And you should have, say, 8, 9, 10, 12, 15 accomplishment stories that you have written out. And I'll talk about the format in a little bit. But you can talk about these accomplishment stories in your interview. This often preempts that tell me about yourself stuff, because you can actually talk about an accomplishment and do it in such a way that it gives a lot of background information about the skills, experience, how you do things on the job. So it answers those questions proactively, and for the lousy interviewers that aren't actually getting that information, you're giving it to them. After your accomplishment stories, your personal success factors. These are things about who you are, more kind of as your personality, that make you good on the job. What is it that you do that makes you a good worker? What makes it you do that makes you successful as an employee? These are what's called soft skills. I'm empathetic, I'm a good team member, I do management by walking around, I am able to see the big picture, I'm able to see problems before they occur, I'm able to keep things in perspective, I'm persistent. These are the types of things that you would not put on your resume, because on a resume they're too vague. But in your interview, you can talk about these things and you can give examples so they have meaning. One of the big FUD factors in interviewing is, will we like you? You're not getting hired if they don't think they like you. So how do you become likable in an interview? Well, certainly it's being personable and eye contact and smiling and being genuinely interested in the interviewer and asking them questions about themselves, not personal but professional questions. It's body language. But then you can also talk about these things that you do on the job that are attractive, and that the interviewer can get a sense of how you are personality-wise and likability-wise on the job. And again, you're doing this proactively, using this presentation, so it's not like you have to wait for them to ask you or elicit this information from you. The next is your strategic action plan. How many of you have an implementation plan for your service? You have an implementation plan, good. Jeff has an implementation plan. Do people know what I mean as an implementation plan for your service? Sure. Okay. When you get hired, you're going to implement your service. What's your goals for the first 30 days? What's your goals for the first 60 days? Or the first 90 days? When I hire you, how are you going to come into my company and start adding value quickly? So this is your 30 and 60 or 30 and 90 day strategic action plan. It's your goals. So when you get hired, these are your goals. Now, in the interview, you present them and say, oh, these are not stamped in stone. When you hire me, obviously as I speak to the supervisor, these things will change. But as I understand the job now, and as I know about the job from my background, and having done similar jobs, here's what I think are some realistic goals for the first 30 and 60 days, and I'd like to speak with you about them. And let's have a conversation. Oftentimes, what you'll hear at this juncture is, these are good goals, but we have this other thing that's happening that really needs to be addressed. Great. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the things, how I would approach solving that problem for you. Great conversation. Conversation that other job applicants are probably not having if they haven't elicited it in some way. Why hire me summary? Okay? You go in and you talk about all the reasons or the main reasons why they should hire you. It's a sales summary. You're in a sales call. Here's a sales summary. Based on the things we talked about, here's why I think I'm a great candidate. And it's a place where you talk about your benefits, the benefits that you will bring that company. So you might say, you know, I have 8 years experience in human resources in an automotive company. And the benefit to you is this. What many job applicants leave out is, and the benefit to you is this. Now, if I'm going for a job in a dealership for an HR position, and I have 8 years of experience of HR in an automotive dealership, you can pretty much guess that the interviewer kind of has a feel for what I can do for them. But why let them guess? Let's just lay it out, and the benefit to you is this. I have 5 years experience selling in this territory, and the benefit to you is this. I can go back to my old accounts, I could get the pipeline up and running faster, I could start to deliver sales to you faster. These are the benefits. And the last is closing questions. You need to go into your interviews with 4, 5, 6 power interview questions. Again, there's again, a great deal more detail in my book about this, but a power interview question is defined as a question that demonstrates knowledge of the company, the industry, or the job. So you don't want to say in your interview, which many people do, where do you see the company in 5 years? Or what do you see as your greatest challenge in the department? Or how are you dealing with the competition? Those are all vague and general questions that you can ask of any company anywhere. What you want to say is, given the fact that printed journalism is moving to online electronic media, how are you dealing with such and such? Given the fact that your competitor has just launched into the market this new medical device that does such and such, how are you expecting your product, serial number X to compete with that new technology? What you're doing is you're demonstrating knowledge, you're demonstrating your preparedness, you're demonstrating that you are interested and motivated in the job enough to really do a lot of preparation. Okay, we're hitting that FUD factor again. Are you interested and motivated in the job? Yeah, I'm so interested. Number one, I put together an interview presentation. And number two, I've researched the industry, the company, the job. And you know that because I'm asking these really great questions. If we had more time, I could give you, there was a great experience, but there was actually someone who used an interview presentation, asked an amazing question, that their interview went on for about another 45 minutes to an hour just on the question. He didn't get the job, but they created a position for him. Asking great questions, right? Okay, so that's the interview presentation. Okay. Again, I'm here to sell my book, but at the same time, there's a lot of information in the book about creating one of these. There's also, by the way, some very exciting news. in that there is an online program that will walk you through step by step by step putting one of these together. It's at interviewbest.com, www.interviewbest.com. And the good news is that we are completely redoing that site with brand new technology. And if I had to make a suggestion, I would wait for about 2 to 3 weeks. The old site is up and running, but it's starting to have cracks in it. So sometimes there's some bugs in it. We're not spending money to fix those. The new site will be up and running. We're trying for April 1st. I don't know if we're going to hit it, but that'll have all new technology. So the advantage of using the Interview Best site to put these together is we have what's called expert libraries. So if you want closing questions for to put in your presentation, you simply go into the questions library and you click on the questions you want, it pops into your presentation, and then you modify them to be the ones you want. If you're looking for additional areas of expertise, we have a huge list of additional areas of, or we have a huge list of areas of expertise broken down by profession. You just go in, click on that area of expertise, it pops it into your presentation, and then you can edit it to be specific. So it really helps you put one of these together. Okay. All right, next issue, video interviewing. It's here. And I'm not necessarily just talking about Skype interviews, which many of you may very well be familiar with. I'm talking about video screening interviews. Has anybody run into a video screening interview? Okay, so there's maybe about 4 or 5 people. Video screening interviews are replacing phone interviews, phone screening interviews. So instead of someone calling you on the phone and saying, "Hi, I'm from Human Resources. I'd like to spend 20 minutes or so, talking to you about the job," and kind of doing a screening interview to decide whether you're going to go on to the next round, what they do is they send you a URL, and you go there, and you hit a button, and a woman pops up on the screen and says, tell me about your greatest strengths. And then you have 30 seconds to think, and you have 2 minutes to video. And they have a series of questions, and then when you're done, that video gets obviously sent to the company, and the company reviews it, and both the HR person reviews it, and they can also send it to the hiring managers. It's coming. More and more people I've been speaking with have run into a video screening interview. And I know these are going to be successful, one, because I'm constantly following the field, but number 2 is venture capital has been pumping a lot of money into these companies. And if you think about it, it's a huge cost savings. So the HR person, instead of being on the phone for say 10 hours, say there's 5 candidates, they're going to spend a half hour with each candidate. It's a huge amount of time. Here they just have the video come in, they can look at a snippet of the video and make a decision. Video interviewing is coming. Out the elephants in the room. If you have risks and concerns about your fit with the job, talk about it in the interview. Most people say, if I don't bring up the fact that I don't have a background in construction and all my background's in IT, no one's going to notice. And then I'll leave and I won't have brought it up and I'll skate by on that. That's wrong. If you're going for, say, a project management job and all your project management has been in IT and you're going for a project management in construction, you need actively in that interview to say, I'd like to talk about the fact that my background's in IT, this is a construction job. Let's talk about that. Recently worked with a candidate who had a number of short-term jobs on his resume. All sorts of good reasons. Company relocated, illness in the family, wife had a good job, he couldn't relocate. I mean, there's all sorts of things. He wasn't getting any job offers. I said, did you talk about the fact that you have these short-term jobs? He says, no, I'm not going to bring that up. I mean, why would I bring attention to that? So with his strategy, he started to talk about it. If it didn't come up in the interview, towards the end of the interview, he said, look, I just want to point out, obviously you may have seen this, I have some short-term jobs on my resume. I'd like to tell you about them. He started to address that, reduce the FUD factor, and he started getting offers. But he had to proactively address those. Age. Proactively address age. I mean, you can say something like, what do you think about me being such an old fart? Don't go that way. What you can say, and people have been, some of my candidates said, what do you think about our difference in numbers of years of experience? I just had a 70-year-old client who was interviewing with a 30-year-old, and he brought that up. He said, what do you think about the difference in our years of experience? And they had a conversation about it, and a 30-year-old said, look, I do work with a lot of people in this company that are 20 to 30 years older than I am, and it's been fine for me. So he addressed that, and he cleared that out of the way. So whenever you're going to an interview and there's an elephant, address the elephant. People were impressed by your potential and your track record. Lots of people focus on, here's what I've done, and a resume is a backward-looking document. People are much more interested in what is the benefit you can bring to them. What are you going to do for us going forward? That's why that interview presentation is really, much of it is, here's the benefits I'm going to bring to your company. So don't spend too much time focusing on the past. Talk about the potential. Talk about your benefits. Talk about what you're going to be able to do for the company. One of the ways to think about this whole thing is, how are you going to make money for the company? Everybody that gets hired is getting hired to make money for the company, either directly or indirectly. Now, if you're a salesperson, it's clear. You're going to go out and you're going to sell stuff, and you're going to bring in revenue. If you're a janitor, it's maybe not so clear, but you're still there to make money for that company. So even as a janitor, you need to be aware that cleaning things faster, cleaning things more completely, making sure that you're taking care of supplies, staying up with the new cleaning technologies. Those are all the things you're going to be doing to make that company money. And again, it's the benefits that you're going to bring to the company. Keep it simple. What you want to do is you want to go into an interview and you want to have identified some critical job requirements, and you want to stay focused on those. People tend to ramble. They tend to think, and people do this in resumes as well, I just need to pile on more information. I need to add another fact. Maybe that's the one that's going to tip the scales for me. So I'll read resumes that have ridiculous amounts of minutia, nuts and bolts stuff in there that is confusing, and it's really noise. Like for example, if you're an administrative assistant, do I need to know that you take notes, or you maintain filing systems, or you arrange meetings? No, as an administrative assistant, I expect you to know how to do those things. So in the interview, you need to keep a limited amount of information. And by the way, anytime you talk about lists of things, never more than 7 items in a list. Like if you have a list in your resume, no more than 7 items. The human brain can't retain more than 7 items. That's why phone numbers are 7 numbers, until they had to add in the area codes. Right? But they start out as 7 numbers. Emotion is a fast lane to the brain. Tell me a story. Okay, so I'm going to bring this up. Here's the format that you need to have for your success stories and for examples. What was the situation? What were the barriers? What actions did you take, and what were the results? Now here's a mistake that lots of career coaches and training programs make, is they talk about STAR. Have people heard about STAR?
Yeah. Situation,
task, action, results. Have people heard about what? Have people heard about, probably not heard about SPAR, right? Or SOAR. SOAR is another variation of this. I mean, SOAR. Lee Heck Harrison does SOAR. So here's the key, is that stories are boring unless they have some tension, right? Unless they have some way to capture emotion. The emotion is captured in the barriers you had to overcome to get this thing done. So if you're telling a story and it's simply a boring, here was the situation, here's the task I had to do, and here's the actions and the results, it doesn't do as well as, I had to overcome this. shortage of money, shortage of time. The people weren't there or they weren't educated, and we were up against this, and we were trailing competitors into the market. We didn't have the resources to do a full advertising campaign. So it's like add in some drama. You don't need to jump up and down on a couch, right? but add in that tension that creates the emotion in your listener. So what you would do is you go into your resume and you pull out all those accomplishments that you have and you write a story about them. And the story is, here's what the situation was, here's what I overcome, here's the actions I took. And as a result, saved the company money, saved time, got into a new market, whatever it is. The best way to answer a question in an interview is to tell a story or give an example. Every time you can tell a story or give an example, you need to do it, and there's all sorts of places in your interview where you can do that. For example, if they say to you, so what's your background in Excel? Do you know how to use Excel? Many people say, oh yeah, I used Excel on my last job. I used it for month-end reports, and in fact, I know how to set up formulas, and I know how to do pivot tables, and I knew how, I used it to do, merging, and I've done a lot of these things with them, and I would say that I'm a intermediate to advanced Excel user. Great, okay, and then they move on. The way to answer that question is, yes, I know how to use Excel. I used it on my last job, and I can do pivot tables, and all that. Let me give you an example of how I have used Excel. Here was the situation. Here's were some obstacles or barriers I had to overcome. Here's the things I did. I set this up, I wrote these formulas, I communicated this, and as a result, I was able to do the month-end reports, and I was able to cut down the time by 45 minutes per report, which actually ended up in a savings to the company of about $20,000 a year. If you look for places and you think about your answers in interviews, you will often be able to come up with an example or a story. Now, realistically, not every example you come up with or every story is going to be able to come up with barriers or obstacles. You do it when you can, but you always want to say, let me give you an example. 3 powerful words, I don't know. People think that in interviews, you have to give up this, being a normal human being that doesn't know everything. In an interview, it's okay to say, I don't know. And then talk about it. I've had a number of people, be asked a question in an interview and not really know about what's being talked about, and they try to fake their way through. I had one person who was kind of changing their career a little bit, going into school, into academia in some way, and they use an acronym. Do you know anything about, what's your thoughts about SCR? And he kind of tried to figure out what it was, and he didn't know, never asked. He didn't get the job. He got home, he Googled it, he said, oh my gosh, that's what it is. Oh, I don't know, what is SCR? Can you tell me what that is? So don't be afraid to say, I don't know, and don't be afraid to say, let me think about that. It's not a timed quiz. Every time they ask a question, you don't have to answer in 3 seconds. Hey, let me just think about that for a second. And you can take 15, 20, 30 seconds, think about it. You are an adult, don't give that up. You're in a business meeting, in a sales call. If you went in and talked to your boss, do they expect you to have an answer to every single question in 3 seconds? No, there's often times you say, let me think about it, or let me go and get you that answer. Okay, so I'm going to tell you now the #1 best interview question of all time. And I'm running out of time, so let's just skip this. No. Okay,
You've got the floor all day.
Okay, so there is a one best interview question of all times, and I tell my clients, if you don't ask this question in every single one of your interviews, you should kick your behind all the way to the car. Now, by the way, as an aside, one of the beauties of the interview presentation is it's hardwired in there. Every presentation you put together online, this question's in there. You can delete it, but it's there, so you don't forget it. Here it is. You ready? I should have a drum roll, right? Good, there we go. Based on my background and experience, skills and education, what do you think would be the greatest challenges, would be my greatest challenges in this job? You know what's the question?
I do.
Okay. So, why is this the greatest interview question of all times? Because you are in a sales call, and any salesperson in a sales call wants to raise any objections that the customer might have. Is there any reason why you wouldn't buy this car today? Is there any reason why you wouldn't put a down payment on this house today? Is there any reason why you wouldn't want me to put this refrigerator in your car today and take it home? So you need to raise objections in your interviews. And you need to do it in such a way that you don't let the interviewer duck you. And lots of books are written about interviewing, and even people that kind of take a sales approach to interviewing says, hey, you need to like close the deal. So, you know, is there any reason why you wouldn't hire me? Do you see me as a member of your team? You know, are we going to the next level? An easy response to that is, we love you, we think you're great, but we have more people to interview. So you're not going to get any content, you're not going to get any information. If you do this, and you do it in the right way, and there's right ways of doing this question, you will get some really great information coming back. So what you do is you ask this question, and sometimes what you'll hear is, well, you know, we think that your greatest challenge is going to be, you know, we have a lot of proprietary systems here at XYZ company, and you're coming in, you're going to need to learn a lot of new systems and a lot of new ways of doing things. And not a good answer. Because anybody coming into that job, regardless of who they are, their background, experience, skills, is going to need to learn the new proprietary systems. So what you would say is, you know, I understand there's going to be a lot of learning, you know, kind of a steep learning curve for anyone coming into this position. I'm wondering if you think that there are challenges that I will have personally in this position. Now you get a couple of responses. Oftentimes you'll hear a response that's a misconception. Well, you know, we think that you know, you don't really have international experience. But wait a second, I do have international experience. We haven't talked about it, so let me fill you in. So oftentimes there's something that's missed in the interview. I'll give you a quick example. I had a CFO who actually, he prided himself on the fact that he had implemented a number of IT accounting systems and really knew information technology related to accounting systems. And he talked about that in his interview. And at the end of the interview, he asked this question, what do you think would be my greatest challenges? And the CEO said to him, I think your greatest challenge is going to be, you're going to want to come in here and you're going to want to spend money on it and putting in a new system. We don't have that money. We can't afford it. So he was able then to say, wait a second. There's no way I would just come in here and just slap in a new system. I would do an analysis and I would present to you if I thought the system would save you or make you money by upgrading it or by putting a new system in, I would suggest that. If not, the system you have might be perfectly adequate. If he had not asked that question and been able to respond to it, when he left the room, the CEO would have said to the other people in the interview, oh, this guy just wants to spend our money, we're not hiring him. He actually got the job. He saved that interview. Realistically, you may ask this question and you may hear something that tells you you're not getting the job. We need someone, you know, with a lot more experience in construction. You know, we think that, you know, it's going to be a challenge for you to, you know, having come from an IT background, you know, construction is going to be a little bit tough for you. You're not getting the job. It helps to know that in the moment, it's going to hurt, it's going to be disappointing, it's going to sting, but at least you're not going home and sitting and waiting for the next couple of weeks. Should I call? Should I email? Should I have heard what's going on? And then oftentimes, because the way companies are, they just never tell you anything at all. And you wait around. And then you commit, many people commit one of the big job search sins, which is you think you did great in the interview, you're real excited about it, you're feeling confident, and you let your job search drop off. Then after 2 or 3 weeks, you hear, and unfortunately you didn't get the job, and you gotta, after going through the depression and the disappointment and all that, you gotta rev your job search up again. So this will tell you right there. And there's no reason why you can't have a conversation about it. You know, we think that your biggest challenge is gonna be you don't have a background in construction. How important is that? That's very important. So, you know, can I assume based on this conversation that you're probably not gonna offer me the job? Yeah, probably not. There you go. Thank you very much. And you're out of there. Okay. By the way, an objection is often a good thing, right? Because it means that they're listening, they're engaged, and they're processing. Think about it. If you're going out to buy something, and you talk to a car salesman, and it becomes apparent to you, there's no way I'm buying this car because there's this other car over here that I just want to come in here and make sure that they didn't have a car that would change my mind. I know that my mind does not change. I'm going to leave here and I'm going to put my money down on this car. And the salesman says to you, any reason why you wouldn't buy this car today? You're not going to say anything. You want to just get the hell out of there. Right? Oh, no, I just need to go home and think about it. You talk to my wife about it, whatever it is. You're just going to get the hell out. Because you are not even interested in having that salesperson help you overcome your fear, uncertainty, and doubt about that car. So again, when you hear an objection in an interview, it may be that the interviewer is actually inviting you to overcome that objection. So don't be scared by it. Another great interview question. How and when should I follow up with you? People don't ask this simple question. And they don't ask it correctly even if they do ask it. So the best thing a salesperson can hear in a sales call is, here's a contract, here's a check. The best thing you can hear in an interview is, we'd love you to start on Monday. You don't hear that stuff, typically, right? What you want as a salesperson is to get your next appointment. So in an interview, if you say to them, how and when should I follow up with you? And they will say something like, well, we're interviewing for the rest of the week. We should get back to you midweek next week. And what you want to say is, if I don't hear from you by Wednesday, is it okay if I give you a call on Thursday? Typically say, yeah, no, we might go through, why don't you give me a call the following Monday? Great, I've got my next appointment. I will call up a week from Monday and I will say, just as we agreed, I am calling you to follow up for my interview on such and such a date. Now, are you guaranteed to get through and get, no. But at least you, number one, know what the follow-up schedule is. You have to sit around, it's been a week, it's been 2 weeks, it's been 3 weeks, should I call, should I email? You definitively have a date and a way to follow up. And there's a little bit of obligation on the part of the interviewer to take that call because they made that appointment with you. Early on in my career, I used to do sales. And I would go and do a sales call, and then I'd say, well, how would you, what's the next step? And they say, hey, send us a proposal. And I'd trot off to my office, and I'd send a proposal, and of course nothing came. If I was smart then, and I knew then what I know now, I would have said, great, I'd love to write you a proposal. How about if I come in next Tuesday to go over the proposal with you? If they were interested, they'd say, sure, come on in. If they're not, well, next Tuesday might be too soon, I'm going on a trip, and I'm not running back to my office. So this is, again, simple but very effective technique that will save you a lot of angst in your interviews. Okay, so don't miss the boat. What I've shared with you today is some new and different information about how to go about your job interviews. Hopefully what you've learned is some kind of simple, quick strategies you can implement without any training, without any thought into your next interview. The interview presentation is kind of a bigger idea, a bigger strategy, which is fantastically powerful. Okay. there's a lot of momentum behind this idea. So it's going to be more mainstream as it goes on. So right now, it's new, it's innovative, it is a differentiator for you. So I would suggest you start using it. Even if you decide, hey, this interview stuff for me isn't for me in an interview. I think it's not helpful, or I don't like presenting, or if you even go to an interview where there may not be an opening to do it, simply preparing an interview presentation is the best preparation you can do for your interviews. It forces you to think through your sales strategy, your message, your information in that interview. So even if you don't use it, you've done a lot of great work, a lot of great preparation. And I can tell you that 100%, almost 100% of all people use it as a leave behind. So even if you don't bring it out and go through it in the interview, at the end, you can take it out, leave it, and then at the end of the day where there's a stack of resumes and your interview presentation, that's a bound professional document, it's going to be a differentiator. All right, so these are some sites you can take a look at. ActiveInterviewing.com is a website about the book. It has information about active interviewing. It has information, it has some more examples of interview presentations you can look at. InterviewBest.com is where you will actually see the program where you can build a presentation. And then @InterviewBest is my Twitter handle. So I Twitter @InterviewBest.com, and I only Twitter information about job interviews. Okay, well, thank you. We're going to take a break now, and then following the break, I'll be here, and then you can ask the questions, about the presentation, or if there's things I didn't cover in the presentation that you are curious about, I'd be happy to talk about those things.
Thank you. 15 minutes. We'll be back at about 1:15.